Olá, sou Jack Perkins. Bem-vindo à Biografia. Os jovens recrutados para combater na Segunda Guerra Mundial ou em qualquer outra guerra presenciaram coisas terríveis. Mas hoje conheceremos um homem que experimentou algo maravilhoso: atuar. Ainda vivendo em Nova York, ele se dedicara à ginástica, chegando até mesmo a apresentar acrobacias em um circo. Mas enquanto ele divertia os soldados americanos em shows do exército, foi mordido pelo micróbio do teatro. E quando a guerra acabou, ele foi para Hollywood. Lá encontrou trabalho, não apenas como herói galã de muitas aventuras, mas em papéis variados, alguns complicados ou fascinantes, e alguns até um tanto quanto bobos. Hoje, em Biografia, a história do ator autodidata que virou uma estrela, Burt Lancaster.
De todos os astros extravagantes da história de Hollywood, nenhum foi tão ousado quanto Burt Lancaster. Daqui até a eternidade. E além dela. Foi um ato de ousadia que durou mais de 4 décadas nas telas, mas que começou sob a lona de um circo. Antes de ser ator, Burt era acróbata. Um acróbata de verdade, apesar dele nunca deixar a realidade confiná-lo.
Gather round, lads and lasses, gather round. You've been shanghaied aboard for the last cruise of the Crimson Pirate. A long, long time ago in the far, far Caribbean. Remember, in a pirate ship, in pirate waters, in a pirate world. Ask no questions. Believe only what you see. No. Believe half of what you see.
Astros de cinema são extremamente grandiosos. É a primeira coisa que um astro precisa ser. Mas Burt era extremamente ousado e extremamente forte, tanto que é impossível para quem o conheceu falar dele sem imitá-lo.
He'd just say, "Is that you, McIntyre? Mrs. Dinner? Dinner with the boys? I'd love to go to dinner."
Son, you work with what you got. With me, it's the baby blues and the teeth.
There will be no rehearsal. Good night.
Mesmo assim, ninguém conseguiu imitar a ousadia de Burt quanto o próprio Burt.
And how do I know there's a merciful God? Because I've seen the devil plenty of times.
He was larger than life, and you felt that when he came into a room.
His personality was such, it was exuberant, it was powerful.
Ele conseguia ser tão grandioso, tão eterno e deliciosamente sujeito a imitações porque o público o via como ele era, uma autêntica força da natureza.
People are in awe of the true movie star. And I think people were in awe of Burt Lancaster. I mean, and he was. I'll tell you something, they should have been, because he was the most physically powerful man I've ever known.
Somebody, a writer friend of mine, once said when they met him that he looked like he'd been sculpted. He did, his hands, the veins in his hands and arms.
Mas o físico e a elegância eram apenas parte da história.
He was a kind, generous, tough, could be ruthless if he had to be.
What you promised, do it. Don't finagle around. It's later than you think.
O que o público também via era uma paixão que existiu durante toda a sua vida.
You're going to Scotland, McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
The old country. Hey, McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
Virgo is well up this time of the year.
Sir?
I'm talking about the sky, McIntyre.
Burt Lancaster. Desde o início de sua carreira como ator, Burt levou uma imensa vantagem às telas. Ele havia passado suas primeiras 3 décadas vivendo, não representando.
Hello, I'm Burt Lancaster. Back visiting my old hometown, New York City.
O mais novo de 4 irmãos, ele nasceu Burt Stephen Lancaster em 2 de novembro de 1913. Sua família morava num apartamento sem água quente numa zona de imigrantes do Harlem. Eles não eram pobres. Sempre havia comida na mesa, apesar de só conseguirem pagar as contas. Eles se acostumaram a conviver com a água fria e os remendos nas roupas.
I had, I must say, a very happy childhood. I had a very lovely father, a very sweet man. And my mother was a very formidable person, very strong and very tough, but very warm and affectionate. And our household was a household in which we had a lot of laughter and a lot of fun.
Ele foi um garoto inteligente que adorava ler e adorava cinema. Seu herói do cinema mudo era o ousado Douglas Fairbanks. E ele adorava principalmente ouvir música. Por algum tempo, ele quis cantar na ópera, outra arena para apresentações ousadas e grandiosas. Mas o centro da infância de Burt em Nova York era o clube comunitário da rua Union, um local onde as crianças do bairro podiam estudar arte, praticar esportes e fazer peças de teatro. Foi lá que um ex-artista de circo ensinou seus primeiros truques acrobáticos na academia que ficava no último andar. Em 1930, quando Burt tinha 16 anos, o centro comunitário deu a ele uma bolsa de estudos para jogar basquete na Universidade de Nova York. Mas ele não estava predestinado a ser um intelectual. 2 anos depois, ele deixou a faculdade para trabalhar como acróbata com seu melhor amigo Nick Gravado.
So I went very much to be in the circus. And my partner and I, we had $30 and a Model A Ford. And with $30 we went off just looking to find a circus.
Isso foi durante a Grande Depressão. Mesmo pouco dinheiro, era difícil de ganhar. Burt ficou no circo por vários anos, se casou com uma artista do circo chamada June Ernst, de quem se divorciou depois, e machucou gravemente uma das mãos, o que o afastou temporariamente. Mas não era uma vida primorosa, e ele sabia disso.
I think before the war came along, before World War II, Burt was basically drifting. He decided in 1940 that he was never really going to get anywhere as a circus acrobat. Between that time and his induction into the service in early 1942, he was holding down a series of odd jobs.
Then the Army came along, and I went into the Army. They put me into a thing called Special Service, and we did a show which was a tremendously popular show overseas for years called Stars and Gripes.
Mais tarde, ele diria que foi o exército que o transformou em ator. E ele também agradeceria ao exército por outra coisa. Em uma apresentação na Itália, ele conheceu uma bela dançarina, Norma Anderson, que depois se tornaria sua esposa. Quando a guerra terminou em 1945, Burt estava com 32 anos de idade, um futuro especialista em entretenimento sem uma especialidade. O encontro casual mudou tudo isso.
A man stopped me in the elevator and said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes, I'm a dumb actor." I was putting him on. The term dumb actor means you do an act in which you don't talk, like the acrobatic act that we did. And he gave me this play called The Sound of Hunting. And that night I went to read for it, and I got the part. I got out of the Army on the day of the first rehearsal, and I was in a Broadway play.
Burt played a wounded soldier who was brought on at the beginning and left, put down to die or to be unconscious at the side of the stage. And all the actors are just acting their hearts out and they're confronting each other with this. And George, who had a little break, a quiet moment, was able to look out into the audience to see how the show was going. And he saw the entire audience was staring over in the corner at this dying soldier. And nobody's watching Stage Center. And George said it was at that moment, he said, "Oh, that's a star."
I went from there to Hollywood, and I was very fortunate there because I came out to work for a man, very well-known producer, Hal Wallace, and I had to do a test for him. Mark Hellinger saw that test, and they signed me for The Killers.
O filme era baseado em um conto de Hemingway sobre um ex-boxeador profissional, o sueco, que pensa que sua vida está sendo salva pela mulher que ele ama, interpretada por Ava Gardner, quando, na verdade, ela o está traindo.
Hello, sweet.
Hello.
Por ser um suspense com gangsters, o filme foi um clássico instantâneo. Para Burt, que interpretou o sueco com grande intensidade, mas com muita simplicidade, foi uma estreia explosiva no cinema.
Where are they going to meet?
The farmhouse north of town on Polk Road, 11 miles out on the turnpike. Colfax hates you, sweet. So much so that Blinky and Dum Dum have caught it from him, and they hate you, too.
Thanks for putting me wise, Kitty.
What are you going to do? Sweet, what are you going to do?
I'm going to do them like they mean to do me.
The first picture I ever did, called The Killers, and in it I had a love scene with a girl called Ava Gardner, who at that particular time was about 19 years old and easily one of the most beautiful women that ever lived. And when I had to kiss her, I found myself very deeply stirred. It took the form of some embarrassment. And the director, Robert Siomak, threw everybody off the set except himself, and we shot the scene.
You're not meeting them tomorrow.
All right.
And she must have been the great paragon from which I can make these observations. I never had any more difficulty playing a love scene.
And when Burt came along, they shouted everybody. They'd never seen a guy like Burt.
Seu momento havia chegado. Um ator carismático, de repente, virou um astro certificado. O público lotava seus filmes. As fãs o assediavam na rua. Ele montou sua própria produtora em parceria com seu agente Harold Hecht.
And I remember Harold Hecht saying, if we're lucky and you make it as I feel you will, he said maybe 5 years from now we'll produce our first picture. A year and a half later we were producing a film called Kiss the Blood Off My Hands with Joan Fontaine. That was our first production.
Com seus grandes papéis ainda por vir, ele trabalhou bastante em filmes que se aproveitavam de sua força como um machão hollywoodiano. Então, em 1950, ele se libertou disso em um divertido filme chamado O Gavião e a Flecha. Finalmente, Burt estava livre para ser ele mesmo ou uma versão muito maior dele mesmo, um ser ousado e destemido que saiu de um circo. O filme foi produzido por sua própria e recente produtora. Então ele mesmo pôde fazer as cenas perigosas, que incluíam uma versão medieval de seu número do mastro de circo com seu antigo parceiro Nick Gravado.
I always said we should have been acrobats.
Isso era algo extremamente raro, pelo menos desde os tempos de Douglas Fairbanks, quando os atos ousados eram realmente realizados pelo astro. A assessoria de imprensa do estúdio explorou a ocasião com alegria.
In Hollywood, Burt Lancaster counts the $1 million reward offered by Warner Brothers to anyone who can prove that Burt himself didn't perform his daring stunts in The Flame and the Arrow.
Now look. You can't make me believe that was you doing those somersaults from, what was it, 6 horizontal bars and 50 feet in the air?
60 feet in the air. Well, why not? Before I got lucky in Hollywood, I used to make my living in the circus. Well, I did stuff like that for coffee and donuts.
And what if somebody proves that wasn't you walking across a pole 35 feet in the air?
Well, if anybody can prove that, they'll get the $1 million. And I'll go back to coffee and donuts.
Ele voou ainda mais alto e mais contente em Pirata Sangrento, uma paródia do gênero pirataria que ainda define a essência da aventura. O melhor de tudo é que Burt o fez com seu antigo companheiro Nick Gravado.
When I did, for instance, a film many years ago called The Crimson Pirate, we had it seen on a trampoline where we were being chased by soldiers. We had to jump down on this, what appeared to be an awning, and jump across the space 14 feet and hit another awning, which was also a trampoline, and go up through the window. And it was a very dangerous stunt. My partner Nick and I got together, and we rehearsed it. And when the time came to do it, I don't mind telling you, I was really frightened to death. I just said, well, here goes. And I went, hit the trampoline, went across, up through the window, turned. He followed me. He was a little short. I reached out and grabbed him by the arm and pulled him right through the window, and we did it in one shot. Oh. But that's what you learn when you're in the circus.
He had a great sense of comedy. In The Crimson Pirate, he had some wonderful comedic moments. And he loved to kind of satirize himself even, which he did a bit.
Hack on our canvas, you hairy-tailed sea snake! Go get him!
Ele podia ter continuado nesse caminho por muitos anos, encontrado mais aventuras agitadas, interpretado mais machões, com pouco a dizer. Mas Burt determinou alvos mais difíceis e sua pontaria era muito boa. Anos depois, Quando lhe perguntaram se tinha algum conselho para atores iniciantes, sua resposta foi curta e direta.
I have many young men who come into my office and have for years and years and say they'd like to be an actor. How can I be an actor? And there's only one answer that I've ever known, in all honesty. Go act.
His portrayal of Jim Thorpe was, I think, kind of a step forward. It required more than just a pirate swinging on a rope.
I think I'm in love with you. I can't be sure because I've never been in love before, but, well, I thought you ought to know.
Aqui, Burt interpretou uma lenda da vida real, um americano que perdeu suas medalhas olímpicas após questionarem sua condição de atleta amador.
Sweating, training to go to the Olympics. For what?
He was a very courageous actor in the fact that if you look at his body of work, the way he stretched himself, things like Come Back Little Sheba.
Quando Ron Wallace comprou os direitos para filmar o sucesso da Broadway, A Cruz de Minha Vida, Burt queria desesperadamente demonstrar seu talento interpretando Doc, o marido alcoólatra de Shirley Buff. Apesar de ter 10 anos a menos que a personagem, Burt fez o teste para o papel e foi escolhido.
Oh, fresh and pretty for him, didn't you? Comb your hair for once. Even washed the back of your neck and put on a girdle.
Daddy, please don't talk like that. I'd rather you hit me, Doc.
You didn't think I knew about it, did you? I heard him stinking that night. I saw them. You knew about it all the time, and you thought you were putting something over on me.
Oh, I didn't, Doc. I didn't know anything about it. Honestly.
And you're crazy if you think I didn't know. You're running a regular Lonely Hearts place. It's probably been going on for years, ever since we were married.
No, it's not true, Doc.
You're lying.
No, Daddy! Daddy, please! No, Doc! Daddy!
Well, none of that's going to happen anymore. I'm going to fix you now. Once and for all.
No, Doc! Don't do this to me, Daddy! Daddy! Doc, it's me! Lola!
Apesar de Shirley Buff ter ganho um Oscar, os críticos consideraram este filme como o melhor trabalho dramático de Burt até então.
That to him was terribly important.
Burt was not worried about his image. If you look at the body of his work, what you see is, in fact, an actor constantly breaking out of whatever image people may have been trying to pigeonhole him in.
Burt se transformou em um dos mais poderosos atores de sua época. Não apenas uma forte presença física, mas um astro que demonstrava sua humanidade em uma série de papéis interessantes e muitas vezes sérios. E a melhor parte do crescimento de Burt como ator era que ele nunca deixava nada para trás. Ele usava técnicas que havia aprendido quando era atleta. Concentrar-se, manter-se equilibrado e viver o momento. Tudo isso aumentava a intensidade dramática de seu trabalho como oficial subalterno e soldado exemplar Sargento Warden, no conto épico da Segunda Guerra Mundial de James Jones, A um Passo da Eternidade. Warren é mais complicado do que parece. Ele dirige sua companhia com justiça, com pulso firme, influenciando o capitão comandante da companhia.
You'll fight, Pruitt. You'll fight because Captain Holmes wants to be Major Holmes. He's got an idea he'll make it if he gets a winning team. And if you don't do it for him, you'll do it for me. Because my job is to keep him happy, see? The more he's happy, less he bothers me, and the better I run his company.
Ele também deseja a mulher do capitão, interpretada por Deborah Kerr.
You better step inside or you'll get wet.
I am wet.
If you're looking for the captain, he isn't here.
And if I'm not looking for him,
He still isn't here.
well, I'm looking for him.
Todos que gostam de cinema conhecem esta clássica sequência, mas ela quase não aconteceu desta forma. O diretor Fred Zimmerman havia planejado filmar o apaixonado encontro de Burt e Deborah Kerr nos penhascos com vista para o mar, mas Burt sugeriu fazê-lo na praia. O produtor gostou da ideia e o resultado foi uma das mais famosas cenas de amor da história de Hollywood.
I never knew it could be like this. Nobody ever kissed me the way you do.
Nobody?
No, nobody.
A um Passo da Eternidade rendeu a Burt sua primeira indicação ao Oscar. Ele levaria mais 7 anos para ganhar o Oscar, mas vários dos filmes que ele estrelou ou produziu nesse período se tornaram clássicos. Em 1955, a Burt Lancaster se arriscou num projeto nada promissor.
Harold Hecht and I produced this picture. Patty Chayefsky wrote it, and Delbert Mann directed it.
Marty was the very first film to come from live television. It was Burt who put the suggestion on the table that Ernie might be a possibility for the role of Marty.
I was taken by Borgnine's jocularity and his way of talking and his fun, loving kind of quality that he had. And I said, Harold, we ought to test Borgnine.
Recognize that fellow? His name is Marty. Never heard of him, hmm? Well, you will. Because we made a picture about him. No, I'm not in it. It's all his. But this is a picture I'm proud to be associated with.
A aposta valeu a pena. Marty ganhou Oscars de melhor filme, diretor, roteirista e ator. Foi a primeira vez que uma produtora independente ganhava com o melhor filme.
I'd like to say a word at this time, if I may, about Ernie Borgnine, who won an Oscar tonight for his performance in Marty. I think that this picture would not have been as big or important a picture if Harold Hecht and I hadn't been so fortunate as to find not only a great actor, but a great personality for the role of Marty.
Thank you, Burt. Thank you very much.
Em alguns casos, ele ansiava por dirigir o filme ele mesmo. Na maioria dos outros, ele se contentava em dominar a produção, mesmo que isso significasse dirigir o diretor.
When I get into it, I grumble and grouse about it. It's not good enough. How are they going to make this picture? I think the writer is terrible. The director doesn't know what he's doing. Beautiful enough. I go through all of this nonsense, and then I get in and I love it. I'm a pain in the neck. I try to direct the picture. I try to tell the other actors how to act. All that. People hate me, and when it's all over, they wind up loving me. I don't know why.
He had his own idea of his acting style. And he and Louis would argue quite a bit. And he would say, so at the beginning, he'd say, all right. He said, we'll do it two ways. First, we'll do it my way, and then we'll do it the Frenchman's way. We'll see which one you use. Well, most of the choices were the Frenchman's choices.
The director said to Burt, now, we're going to rehearse every day when we come back after, and we're going to do a reading now. And Burt went, and so we all sat around and we read. And I just sat there watching Burt, and he just kind of mumbled like a movie reading. He did it very quietly, very interior. And then he dismissed us all. And as we were going out, I heard him say, there will be no rehearsal. This is a Burt Lancaster picture. We are going to be 12 hours in the desert, Eddie. There will be no rehearsal. Good night.
Burt and I had an occasional difference of opinion about things, but he was never difficult to work with. And it was never trying to get something out of Burt. Burt was there. Burt was a great, great contributor to each of the movies that we did together.
Dos privilégios do poder de Burt como executivo era que ele podia produzir e, é claro, estrelar filme sobre a maior aventura de sua vida real.
When I got the part of Trapeze, I was just thrilled. They chose me because they knew I was physically adept. I never did the triple, and I didn't do the double, but what I did was I catch. I learned the catch, and I did a lot of the ground tumbling.
Now watch my swing. There. This is where your catcher would be for any big trick. Here I come. Catch me. You fool without a net. Who needs a net? I should have dropped you on your head. But you didn't.
It was such a physical film that everything had to be on point. Our timing had to be excellent for the physicalness, because in a lot of the ground tumbling, as I was tumbling, the camera was moving with me, and Burt had to stay within the frame. You know, so it took a lot of inner work between the camera and Burt and I. He didn't know pictures, it was because he was a circus performer, but he knew the camera. You know, he instinctively knew what it was to have a camera. He instinctively knew what movement meant.
Ele fazia a maioria de suas cenas perigosas e o filme foi grande sucesso comercial.
He kept busy on that trapeze even into his late 60s. He had a gym all over the place. Wherever he went, he ran. He was in great physical condition, and he worked out every day for hours.
He was still in his 60s doing giant swings on the high bar when he would work out. I was always grabbing people and saying, "Come here, watch this. Burt, do a giant swing. You know, it's an amazing thing to do." You go all the way around on the bar.
Tony Curtis dividiu a marquise com Burt em 1957. A personagem de Burt, J.J. Hunsaker, foi inspirada no colunista social e personalidade do rádio Walter Winchell.
Well, Sweet Smell of Success was a novelette written by Ernie Lehman. It showed you the vagaries of what the press was like.
All of it based on my experiences as a press agent in New York, knowing what it was like to be in thrall to the Walter Winchells and how they could make or break us.
We generated an income for them, and they could call you anything they wanted, and they did. And that was the basis of that story. And nobody dared to even go near the press in those days.
They were afraid of it. Heck, till Lancaster weren't afraid of Winchell.
You see that grin? That's the charming street urchin face. It's part of his helpless act. He throws himself upon your mercy. He's got a half dozen faces for the ladies. But the one I like, the really cute one, is the quick, dependable chap. Nothing he won't do for you in a pinch. So he says. Mr. Falco, whom I did not invite to sit at this table tonight, is a hungry press agent and fully up to all the tricks of his very slimy trade. Match me, Sidney.
They become two really interesting, dynamic forces hating each other, and yet they're the best of friends.
Para a América do pós-guerra, este era um novo tipo de filme, um estudo por trás das câmeras dos cínicos famintos por poder que criavam e destruíam os astros.
You print them, don't you? Yes, with your clients' names attached. That's the only reason the poor slobs pay you, to see their names in my column all over the world. Now I make it out you're doing me a favor?
I didn't say
The day I can't get along without a press agent's handouts, I'll close up shop and move to Alaska lock, stock, and barrel.
And as the picture went on, he got grander and grander and more important. And I, as Sidney, became much more devious.
It was relentless in its avoidance of any attempt to gain audience sympathy.
I say to him, you know, I never thought I'd make a killing on a guy's integrity. And he looks at me and he says, you know, Sidney, I wouldn't want to take a bite out of you.
You're a cookie full of arsenic.
And it comes out a very brooding, dark, brilliant film. Captures the very sense and essence of what went on in those days.
Para Burt, a veracidade de sua atuação logo seria superada por sua interpretação do vendedor que se tornou o evangelista Elmer Gantry. Este era o verdadeiro Burt Lancaster. Nem a sua sutileza, nem a humildade faziam parte da interpretação.
And Mother, you can't say your psalms and look at God through the bottom of a beer mug now, can you? And you, brother, you can't go to church on Sunday and cheat at business on Monday. We're coming back to you, God. We're coming back to the old-time religion.
Burt Lancaster himself said that the closest character that he ever played to himself was Elmer Gantry.
Well, I had a boyfriend of mine by the name of Moby Dick, who lived on 106th Street. And he and I were pals from the time we were 15, 16 years of age. I never heard from him when I got into the movies. When I did Elmer Gantry, which was some 20 years or more after I'd gotten into films, I got a letter from him. And he said, Burt, he said, that's the first time I've seen you act like you used to act when you were a kid in the streets, full of the old devil and baloney and so forth and so on. And that's what he remembered. And it was in a certain sense like me. I loved that part.
Burt usou toda a sua lábia de verdade quando Elmer Gantry tenta convencer a evangelista irmã Cheryl, interpretada por Gene Simmons, a deixá-la entrar para o grupo itinerante dela.
What do I find? Right behind the altar. Lulu Baines, my betrothed, my bride-to-be, half naked, locked in the arms of a lover, a card shop from Chicago. A couple of years later, he was bumped off in a gang war. God rest his soul.
When Burt did Elmer Gantry, I mean, he owned that part. He owned it. And he realized it. I mean, there was nobody in the world that could have played Elmer Gantry but Burt Lancaster.
Direto como sempre, Burt lutou para ter Shirley Jones como Lulu Benz, a filha de um diácono que virou prostituta.
He went to Richard Brooks, the director, writer, and said, I think she would be wonderful. And there was much opposition from Brooks at that time. But Burt had seen me and he felt that I was right for the role.
Please, don't go yet.
What?
You know, I could use some of that cash after all.
Why, sure. Maybe I could send you some from time to time. That is, till you get a job, or maybe meet some nice, respectable man, huh?
I meet nice, respectable men every night. Best bank in America.
Enquanto Shirley Jones ganharam Oscars por suas atuações.
He wanted that Academy Award, and he said it, and you felt it. He wasn't one of those people that said, oh, well, thanks a lot, but, not at all. I mean, he was ecstatic. He felt the same way for me. He felt that some sort of pride and joy that I had won as well.
Se o papel de Burt em Entre Deus e o Pecado caiu como uma luva, o papel que ele interpretou em Julgamento em Nuremberg lhe caiu mal até demais, o que o tornou ainda mais interessante.
Burt was playing a great German jurist. At first, like a lot of people, he supported Hitler because he believed that he would be good for Germany. And then he began to understand the tragedy of what was happening.
Where were we? Where were we when Hitler began shrieking his hate in Reichstag? Where were we when our neighbors were being dragged out in the middle of the night to Dachau? Where were we when they cried out in the night to us? Were we deaf? Dumb? Blind?
It wasn't an easy thing to put universality into the role of a Nazi, even an ex-Nazi. He achieved it.
Burt queria trabalhar com os melhores diretores que pudesse encontrar. Ele encontrou um deles atrás das câmeras de Juventude Selvagem. Ele e John Frankenheimer fariam 5 filmes juntos. E ele também notou o impressionante talento do jovem diretor de diálogo do filme, Sidney Pollack.
He really, at the end of that picture, encouraged me to become a director.
Vários anos depois, Burt iria estrelar 2 filmes sob a direção de Pollack. Antes disso, no entanto, ele e John Frankenheimer fizeram Um Homem de Alcatraz, a estranha e complexa história de um assassino incorrigível chamado Robert Stroud. Durante seus 53 anos da prisão, 41 deles passados numa solitária, Stroud se tornou uma autoridade mundial em cuidados e criação de canários.
I knew going in to do The Birdman of Alcatraz that this was a film that Burt Lancaster was obsessive about.
The collaboration on Birdman, that was the fondest one because, I mean, for me, I was still very young in the business, so to speak, and it's terribly thrilling. I mean, to be working with this really powerful and a big star who was so focused.
Sua interpretação de Stroud lhe rendeu outra indicação ao Oscar.
First day I came here, you as much as asked me to get down on my knees and whip her. I wouldn't do it then, I won't do it now. I won't lick your hand, and that's what eats you, ain't it, Keeper? Well, you keep this in mind. A man ain't whipped until he quits, and I'll never give you that pleasure.
Stroud he just personified what the indomitability of the human spirit was.
You don't want to be a jailbird all your life, do you? You're a highballing sparrow. So you fly high, old cock. Go out there and bite the stars, for me. Find yourself a fat mama and make a family. You hear?
He stood tall, and Burt was like that in life.
A essa altura, Burt estava chegando aos 50 anos, a marca do meio século, e sua vida era completa. Ele e sua esposa, Norma, haviam criado uma família e adoravam seus filhos James, William, Joanna, Susan e Sheila.
Burt lived a quiet life, very fine father. His children loved him so much. He was like a big kid, with all of us.
O interesse de Burt pelas crianças ia além de seus próprios filhos. Ele até apareceu em um Vila Sésamo, fazendo uma leitura dramática do alfabeto.
P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Ele educou a si mesmo, se tornou uma pessoa culta e não apenas em relação ao cinema.
He was very bright. Very bright. Read a great deal. Loved music, loved opera. Loved all the classics.
Lancaster's interest in art and opera was part of the tapestry of who he was.
If we were having a bad day on the set, they would put on opera.
And was odd to be in Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and hear this sound
wafting through his trailer out in the middle of the desert.
It really meant a lot to him.
And then I used to go when I was as early as 15 years of age. I would go down to the Metropolitan. You could go upstairs in those days and stand for $1.10 in the top tier, you know, which was about 6 levels up. And I saw people like Rosa Poncell and the Tibbets and the Thomas. I saw De Luca, the famous Italian baritone, in one of his farewells. I was fortunate that the first operas that I was introduced to were operas like La Bohème and Carmen, which are very tuneful and melodious and beautiful.
A paixão de Burt se estendia às artes mais
He was
domésticas.
a marvelous cook.
Yes, I like to cook. I don't do many things, but I do a couple of things pretty good.
Like what?
Well, for instance, I make great spaghetti and a sensational sauce.
And he loved to cook and he loved to eat.
We were shooting in this film, Rock at Gibraltar. So when I got home that night, Bill Pullman and I were roommates, and I said, Bill, let's call Burt. Got his number, and I called Burt. I said, well, I'm calling because I wanted to invite you to dinner. Bill Pullman is playing Crow. We wanted to invite you to dinner. And he says, dinner? Dinner with the boys? I'd love to go to dinner. Let's have some Long Island lobster. And we went to dinner that night. Bill Pullman, myself, Burt, and his assistant. And we spent, must have spent 5 hours in this outdoor restaurant on Long Island, just telling stories.
O homem de cultura encontrou novos mundos a conquistar no velho mundo. Ele se tornou um astro europeu de primeira grandeza.
Occasionally a role and a picture are so impressive that we behind the camera want to shout about it from the rooftops. I have just been privileged to work in such a picture. The film is The Leopard, from the celebrated bestseller, and it provides one of the most challenging roles it's ever been my good fortune to portray, under the masterful direction of Luchino Visconti.
A direção foi de mestre, como também foi a interpretação de Burt como Dom Fabrício, o Leopardo, um nobre confrontado por uma avassaladora mudança social.
We were the leopards, the lions. Those who take our place will be jackals and sheep. And a whole lot of us, leopards, lions, jackals and sheep, will continue to think ourselves the salt of the earth.
Uma atuação, incidentalmente, que Burt inspirou em seu diretor, Visconti, que também era um nobre italiano.
And he used to talk about the brilliance of that detail, that when he went into the set, he would open a drawer of something and there would be 10 period shirts of this fabulous lawn, all neatly stacked and pressed.
And he turned to the cameraman and he said, "Is this going to show in the frame?" And the cameraman said, "No." So Burt said to Visconti, "Well, what are they there for?" And Visconti said, "You're the prince. It's for you. It's for you to touch." Well, that was for Burt a revelation, that they would go to the time and expense of doing this just to help him feel the character.
Burt era o príncipe, física e espiritualmente, em um filme com a grandeza de E o Vento Levou, e que passou a ser visto nos últimos anos como uma obra-prima do cinema mundial. Os meados da década de 60 foram bons anos para Burt. Ele trabalhou com cineastas que respeitava. John Frankenheimer o dirigiu em O Trem.
It's a film about the last days of the Paris occupation by the Germans, where they intended to steal the modern French art from the Jeu de Paume and take it to Germany, and it's a story of the French resistance's attempt to stop the train.
The part that I play in it is the leader of a resistance leader who happens to work in the railroad yards, who's a regular railroad man, and who at first is very reluctant to have anything to do with saving the art, because feels that what is really important is an attempt to sabotage trains that are carrying necessary equipment to the front for the actual fighting.
To hell with London. We started this whole thing for one reason, to stop the train, because the Allies were going to be here. Well, where are they? Every day they've been doomed. And every day a man has been killed for thinking they were just over the next hill. I say to hell with it. Now they want us to paint the train? Let them blow it up!
Burt Lancaster's one of the greatest stuntmen that ever lived, too. All the stunts in the train, Burt did himself. That whole business at the beginning there up on the signal tower, where he slides down and runs along and jumps on the train, that's all done in one shot. Because I want the audience to know that there's no double, that that's Burt Lancaster.
You deaf, you old goat! Get out of there and get under cover! Get off my train! You damn fool! They'll be raining bombs any second! Get off my train!
Durante as filmagens, Burt feriu gravemente seu joelho.
And I went into his room to talk to him, and he was sitting on the edge of the bed and he was crying. I've never seen that before. I said, what is it? He said, look. He pointed to his knee. His knee was swollen up like that.
Em vez de interromper a produção, Frankenheimer sugeriu que inventassem uma cena onde Burt levava um tiro para que ele pudesse mancar pelo resto do filme.
He ran off the train and we had that guy fire, boom, we hit it, and that was it.
Burt também vivia intensamente no mundo real da política e da mudança social. Quando Martin Luther King anunciou sua marcha em Washington, Burt ainda estava filmando O Trem na França. Antes disso, naquele mesmo ano, ele não quis viajar da França até Hollywood para a entrega do Oscar, mesmo tendo sido indicado por O Homem de Alcatraz. Mas aquilo era cinema, e isto era a vida real. Burt pegou o avião para passar um dia em Washington e se uniu a um contingente de ativistas de Hollywood no Memorial a Lincoln, onde foi um dos principais oradores.
We, the undersigned, hereby publicly express our support of the March on Washington movement, which aspires not only to eradicate all racial barriers in American life, but to liberate all Americans from the prison of their biases and their fears. It is on our awareness of what this struggle means, and in the degree of our dedication to it, that our future and the future of the world depend.
Em seus últimos anos de vida, Burt apoiava com fervor o Sindicato de Liberdade Civil Americana e participava ativamente de causas políticas e sociais.
For more than 60 years, one group in this country has served as the watchdog for the Bill of Rights, your rights. They have helped people on the right, on the left, Republicans, Democrats, blacks, whites, all Americans. People whose rights were in jeopardy. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who agreed with them 100% of the time. But you won't find anyone who doesn't believe in their guiding principle. Liberty, justice, for all.
Por isso foi adequado que seu último papel tenha sido em um filme para a TV sobre Brown, contra o Conselho de Educação, o famoso caso que acabou com a segregação racial nas escolas.
He was a very liberal thinking man and very committed to his feelings about people, about what they felt and about their rights.
So ask me how I get into what you call liberal causes. I don't think they're liberal. I think of them as fundamental issues, which are really important to people and which give value to your life, that's all.
Os filmes, às vezes, discutem temas sérios, disfarçando-os como fantasias assustadoras. O terceiro filme de Burt, com John Frankenheimer, foi 7 Dias em Maio, uma adaptação para o cinema de um polêmico best-seller.
Kirk really campaigned to get Burt Lancaster in the movie. He was one of the producers of the picture. He said, well, Kirk, Burt can't play that colonel. I mean, I just don't believe the fact that Burt's playing the colonel. He said, no. He said, I'll play the colonel, let Burt play the general.
Burt interpretava o vilão, um general que trama para derrubar o governo dos Estados Unidos.
I know you think I'm a weak sister, General. But when it comes to my oath of office, defending the Constitution of the United States...
Somebody has to teach me how to salute a flag.
Somebody has to teach you about the democratic processes that flag represents.
But don't you presume to take on that job, Mr. President. Because frankly, you're not qualified. Your course of action in the past year has bordered on criminal negligence. This treaty with the Russians is a violation of any concept of security. You're not a weak sister, Mr. President. You're a criminally weak sister.
Kirk Douglas interpretava o coronel que entrega o general.
Are you sufficiently up on your Bibles to know who Judas was?
I asked you a question.
Are you ordering me to answer, sir?
I am.
Yes, I know who Judas was. He was a man I worked for and admired, until he disgraced the 4 stars on his uniform.
Este foi o terceiro filme que eles fizeram juntos. O primeiro foi Estranha Fascinação, de 1947. Mas estes dois astros só vieram a se entender bem 10 anos depois, quando contracenaram em um filme de companheiros à frente de seu tempo.
Much obliged, Marshal. I'll see you in Dodge City and thank you properly.
You can thank me properly by staying out of Dodge City.
Drawn by destiny to this scarlet dawn, October 6, 1888, when the gunfight at the OK Corral left its bloody imprint across the annals of the West.
Hit the dirt! You're a lawman, Wyatt. Don't throw away a lifetime's work. Where's your logic?
To hell with logic. It's my brother lying there.
Pictures that he and Dad did together were magical, and there weren't many two men stars working together as well as they did.
There was a little bit of one-upmanship there. One was always trying to do better than the other. And they professed to be great friends, but there was a lot of competition there. And it brought out the best in both of them, I think.
And we've done 6 pictures together. And we have a lot of controversy and conflict when we work, because he's very much like me. He's conceited. He's opinionated. He tries to tell me how to act. I try to tell him how to act. And strangely enough, out of this kind of feuding and fighting and fussing has come a great respect and mutual love that we've gained.
It was like the Bickersons. They were, for two people who had this deep affection for each other. No, Burt, you're wrong. No, Kirk. No, Kirk.
You want movies with a message now?
No, I want everything with a message.
No, I don't. I want entertainment. I want to make a movie that's entertaining. If it has a statement, let it be secondary. But people come to see a movie not to learn something, but to entertain.
The purpose of art is to be able to do both. That's what makes a good play.
Burt e Kirk fizeram 7 filmes juntos. O último deles foi Os Últimos Durões, de 1986. Um dos maiores desafios de uma longa carreira é continuar trabalhando. Burt conseguiu se manter produtivo. Ele dava duro para permanecer jovem, ou pelo menos saudável, apesar de seu casamento ter terminado e de às vezes sentir solidão e até depressão. Um ator deste faroeste filmado na Espanha o via como um rei deposto. Mas Burt não estava pronto para abdicar. Outro membro do elenco, Susan Clark, via a luta dele de outra maneira.
Don't let the bastard steal your dream is what I learned from him. Absolutely. Absolutely. I learned that the biggest, it isn't what you look like, it isn't the size of your body or whatever, to survive, which is really what he was talking about, is an energy.
Para o mais atlético dos astros de Hollywood, era hora de preservar seus recursos, e não apenas seus recursos físicos. Ele sabia como poupar sua energia mental até o momento exato de utilizá-la.
There's a scene in which I ride up and discover him dying, and we have this great last death scene. That's our last day shooting together. And he said, "Son, come over here. Sit by my rock here." He says, "You're a hell of an actor, but you don't use your rehearsal time properly." He says, "You try to please the sound man, try to please the cameraman, certainly all those girl extras over there, and you give a performance for every take in rehearsal, and you shoot your wad. It's like making love to a woman. Can't try to come all at once, son. You have to build slowly. Think of this, think of that, think of this, and then you have a performance." And it's the best acting advice I ever got.
Bernardo Bertolucci, o mais famoso jovem diretor da Europa, queria que Burt interpretasse um patriarca italiano em seu filme épico 1900. O problema era que o orçamento não era suficiente para pagar o salário de Burt. Então Burt se ofereceu para trabalhar de graça. O gesto foi impressionante, mas também foi lógico. Burt ainda precisava de uma sensação de aventura. E ele a conseguia através de cineastas que entendiam o que tinha a oferecer no outono de sua vida. Um dos filmes foi A Travessia de Cassandra, dirigido por seu amigo George Pancosmatos. Eu tive a sorte de fazer parte do elenco internacional que incluía Sophia Loren, Richard Harris e a querida Ava Gardner.
Burt took it very seriously. Look at what he did. From 32 to almost 50, maybe 20 years of solid filmmaking, you know? And then he chose so carefully near the end.
Em 1980, o diretor francês Louis Malle e o roteirista americano John Guire fizeram um filme de humor e elegância únicos, Atlantic City.
It was an amazing experience because Burt conserved all his energy for the few minutes a day that he was on camera. And he would sit in great silence. It was almost something Asian. He would just sit very, very still all day until they called places and action, and he would come to life only when the camera was rolling. This part of this broken down gangster triggered something in Burt. Burt was able to reveal a very non-sentimental vulnerability.
I watch you.
Huh?
The place where we live. I watch you.
What do you do when you watch me?
I look at you. You take off your blouse, then you run the water. Then you take a bottle of gold perfume and you put it on the sink. Then you slice the lemons. You open a box of blue soap.
And he was nominated for an Oscar for it, and that gave him a great sense of pride. And I think that it made a young generation of filmmakers say, oh, I want to work with that man.
Desses cineastas era Bill Forsythe, que fez o memorável Momento Inesquecível.
In Local Hero, I play basically a telex man who does business for this billionaire eccentric named Happer, played by Burt Lancaster. Bill Forsythe, who wrote Local Hero as well as directed it, wrote the part of Happer for him. And, you know, he read it, and he told me, he said, it's one of the best scripts I've ever read, and you can't not do a great script.
This place has a lot to offer. But I think the refinery site was a mistake. Ben's been filling me in. Ben has 8 unplotted objects in this very sky right above us. Think of that. We're doing a scan tonight.
The acquisition is at a pretty advanced stage, sir.
Oh, I want this place, McIntyre. Make no mistake about that. But tell Kraft to start rethinking the refinery site when you see it tomorrow. I see a kind of an institute here.
You could call it the Harper Institute, sir.
Might be right. Might be just the name for it. Says it all.
A presença de Burt deu peso, mas também elegância em O Rochedo de Gibraltar, seu 71º filme e um dos primeiros de Kevin Spacey.
I think that he had been one of the most successful actors about making transitions through his career of virile leading man into more sort of character-driven parts. He just beautifully aged through his career, and he was smart with roles that he did. But this was the first time he was playing an older man who was sick, who was somewhat at the end of his line. And Burt had a big monologue. There was a lot of dialogue, and it was taking him a while to get it. But I remember one take that just cracked us up because he had a line where he said, "Ah, yes, I remember back in the 1950s, I was a blacklisted writer. Yes, I remember then." And he sort of went on. But about 3 takes into this, he did one that I'm telling you, tears were streaming out of our eyes because Burt suddenly went, "Ah, yes, I remember back in the 1950s, I was a black male. I remember then the time that Wait a minute, that's not right. I wasn't a black male then. I better do this again." And I'm telling you, we were on the ground, and for the rest of the film, we used to come up to Burt and go, "Ah, yes. So what was it like when you were a black male growing up in the South, Burt?" He was great.
O fim da linha de Burt estava se aproximando, mas ainda não havia chegado. No ano seguinte, ele interpretou uma personagem inesquecível em O Campo dos Sonhos, seu último longa-metragem. Em 1990, ele se casou com Suzy Scheller, 2 meses após o casamento, Burt sofreu um derrame que o paralisou. Ele morreu em casa, em 24 de outubro de 1994. Ele tinha 80 anos de idade.
I ain't quitting.
It's not quitting if your hand's gone.
I stayed the limit, didn't I?
That's right. They can't take that away from you.
He was a Harlem street kid who ran away to join the circus and ended up acting in historical novels with Visconti directing him.
And so there was a combination of this circus acrobat and this intellectual. And somehow at the end, the two met.
Think of him as a creature in flight and magnificent.
When I think of Burt, I think of those teeth. You know, everybody jokes about it. But nevertheless, it was a giant part of him, and his laugh.
I loved his humor, his balance. He was always searching for something new.
A strong, focused individual.
Burt had a great appreciation for life, and he grabbed it.
Assim termina a história do garoto que foi do subúrbio de Nova York até as alturas de Hollywood, para nos trazer personagens que devem durar de hoje até a eternidade. Este é a Biografia e eu sou Jack Perkins. Até a próxima vez.